was at the MenCap sort of hall with you this evening. That I think I was scheduled to be doing this talk a year ago, in actual fact, and I was looking. I had a reminder sort of a couple of days ago that it was a year ago that I took Anne up to the to set up at Astrofest for the BAA stand, but it just seems that so much has changed in that intervening period. And as I said before, that it's an element of a historical talk tonight for the simple reason it was going abroad to observe. So it's very much a case of something we can't do at the moment. Okay, so as far as the introduction is concerned, why the talk? Now, I've got myself an observatory at home, and that where I live, we border onto some council trees, and so when I was building the telescope or the observatory, I had to build something that there was no point in having it revolving the top, so I just had a roll-off shed in a sort of an octagonal shape with the front sides coming down. So that's all well and good to observe from home, but unfortunately, lots of my neighbours are scared of the dark, and it does mean that with 180 degrees being wiped out by the trees, and then looking over the other side to the houses with their lights left on permanently in the evenings, that really it was something that a group of us were fed up with when we were at Basingstoke, and we set ourselves up an expedition group within Basingstoke society itself. Now, in the good old tradition of astronomical societies, we didn't have a split actually. It almost came to that, but we avoided a split. But it's a group of us who are interested in going overseas, and there are about 10 of us now from Andover Society as well, Mark Radici and Lawrence. But we've now arranged, starting in La Palma in 2015. So we've arranged, I think it's about 6 or 7 of them that we've actually done. So and you can look on the BAA Basingstoke Expedition Group website, and there's some various blogs, most of them by my friend and colleague Dave Shavall, but and that's one of his pictures as well. So that's the reasoning behind the trip. Why La Palma? Now, when looking at, most of you will know already that the weather in the UK is not particularly good, and that was one of the key factors when the Isaac Newton telescope was moved from Sussex very soon after it was inaugurated over to La Palma, or at least the majority of it was moved over there. The mirror wasn't moved, the mount wasn't moved, so I'm not quite sure what was actually moved, but it said that it was moved over to La Palma. But when you're looking at hopefully you can see my mouse. So you've got Tenerife, which is the main one of the main islands. La Palma out here, that's where the majority of the optical telescopes are based now. Whilst we went to La Palma initially, as far as our overseas trips were concerned, we did actually go back to Tenerife for quite a number of years. And what we were actually doing at that stage, we were staying in hotels at the bottom of the mountain, and then having our dinner at 6:30, driving the hour-long up the winding roads up to the observatories to observe all night by the side of the road, and then driving down in the morning, an hour down on hairpin bends. So we decided that we've gradually moved away from that, and we've used some. One person stayed up at the residential up on Tenerife. They were able to do that, and we've used also some accommodation nearer the top of the mountain in La Palma as well. So why do we go to La Palma? This is not necessarily a heat map, but it's an image taken from the ISS, which basically shows the light that is pollution from outside external street lighting and tourist lighting over in the Canaries. So we've got Tenerife, and you can see there is a huge amount of light coming out from the tourist resorts. You can contrast that with La Palma, and yes, whilst you've got Santo de la Cruz to one side on the east of the island, it's very much darker, and that makes it far better for observing, which is why Tenerife is more or less the professional observers. They use it for solar observing, but very little visual observing is done, or let's say electronic imaging is done from there now. So this is La Palma, and a couple of years ago I gave a talk to Newbury, Los Roques de Macacos, which was basically looking at the observatories on the top of La Palma. This is one that I took, I think back in 2019, 2018. They're building a new visitor centre, more or less right at the top of the mountain. It's been under construction for about 2 years. That was up to about 2019, so it was in place. And this is not being a lake. This is because it's it's about 100 feet underground. This is the glass dome of it, which is actually used as a reflection to take a picture of the observatories. And here you've got the William Herschel observatory at that point there. So we've also got the Magic Telescope, and looking across the observatories that's up at the top. And I've included this one really because one of the advantages of observing from a mountain, whilst our group has also looked at going to France as well, one of the benefits of observing from either La Palma or Tenerife is that whatever the weather down underneath, by the coast, it is normally possible for you to drive up the mountain and come out into sunshine and basically have a clear sky. And that's also got an advantage in that the cloud base there, as you can see, it's almost like looking out over the sea. That's the cloud, and that effectively blocks the light pollution that may be emanating up from the tourist areas at the bottom. That's the Gran Tucán, the 10-meter Spanish telescope. That we've got the Isaac Newton and the William Herschel for the UK over there, and this is the large 10-meter one. And this was, we'd gone up, this Dave Chauveau and myself looking over. We went up to watch the sunset and then to observe overnight because we were clouded out down below. So one of the things is obviously observing from the top of the mountain that this is the William Herschel telescope. We're carrying out a test on a laser that was pointing up near to Regulus. That's in actual fact on this occasion, but they were using it for a test for adaptive optics, which was going to be used in the observatories down in Chile as well. So this was it was quite interesting to see. It was invisible by the naked eye, but when you actually took a picture, that it did mean that it actually you ended up with a line on your images. So La Palma is a map of La Palma, which basically shows the astronomical observing points that they've set up around the island. They are very much, there's a light pollution law, the star laws that were introduced in 1988, and basically that's limited the amount of lighting that can be used outside. Both street lights have to be pointed downwards, and also the any wattage, it has to be under a certain wattage to be able to comply with the laws. Here again, this is one of the views, even a signpost up saying Polaris, and I think Polaris, I think it's got on how far away it is. But, so they set up these these observing points, which are more for people, for them to take tourists to, I believe, than for actual witness farmers. But this next one was an old windmill that we discovered on our walk, and what I really wanted to do. We were supposed to be going out to the Palma again. It was last April, and that was cancelled. It was postponed to November. TUI cancelled the flights to about a week before we were due to go out, and we were due to go out, fly out next Thursday. So we've got the accommodation booked, and I think the person is refusing to honour the sort of carry the booking forward. It's a bit of a shame again this time, but it's not with ASOS, but with another private renter. Okay, so when you're travelling overseas, you've got to be mindful of what you're going to take, because so you've got to decide how you're going to get there. EasyJet used to fly direct to La Palma during the winter. TUI were the only people who flew during the summer, and it's very much a case of you've got to decide what you're going to take, because even we've now determined that you can take one case, your hand baggage, but if you can also take sports equipment, and sports equipment can cover astronomical equipment as well. So you can actually get sort of a 20 kilogram case and a 30 kilogram sports equipment bag, which does enable you to take a bit of equipment out, so you can take advantage of observing out there. So what I wanted to do on this one was, I know that when I've come up to Newbury at one point, that George had just returned from a week with Ollie Penrith, I believe, that down at Lagrange. And so what I wanted to do this one, ASOS Star Camp is one that has been specifically set up in La Palma, and it was just really to give people a sense about what might be available if you want to go out there. So it's been open for 2016 was the time when it was opened. It's a specialist centre run by a German, I think he's a magazine publisher, but he's sort of had money in his pocket and decided he wanted to go and live in La Palma, and he basically bought was an old botanical farm, or botanical garden, sorry. So this is an overview or a map of what you've actually got there. So there's accommodation here. There are about four villas. There's one villa over to that side, which is entirely self-contained, which can accommodate about 3 people, but critically only one observing deck. We've then got one double accommodation there, another one there, and two here. And if I go for the next one, and then the observing points, there was an observing point down here, and also 2 there, as well as one on top of the accommodation there. So this is showing the actual looking back at the site from the valley. So they've also got a sort of communal room called an orangery, basically, which is sort of for downtime and for cooking and socialising. That was where the accommodation that we stayed in, and then there was, as I said, there was a further one down near the double observation point, which was down over to on the left-hand side. This is the type of pad that they've actually got. So that was one which that was my first sort of, when I initially sort of was doing my recce tour. That's not our equipment, but that's it can be set up, and people use the sort of the metallic foil to cover them up during the day. But the advantage of these sites is that it's all, you can leave the tripods out, and on the back of the rail that you've got a sort of a table which has got sort of power attached to it as well. The only thing that sort of, you've got a small little handrail around there, and when you think there's about a 30-foot drop just over the other side of it, one question as to whether that's particularly sufficient in the overall in the middle of the night. So this is the orangery that Kai, the owner, collects telescopes, and so there's a variety of refractors that he's managed to acquire over the years. They're going back to, there's a small Cook one, so they're up to about 3-inch refractors that he's put together, and then the far end is the kitchen and so on, which is communal for everybody. So there's five sort of huts, so you could potentially have 10 people in cooking, but so it could get rather crowded. But now this is just really want to share with you the accommodation. When we used to stay down in hotels, everybody had single rooms, and we used to sort of, all the cooking was done for us, and we just used to sort of roll into dinner and then go up the mountain, observe, come back, have breakfast, fall into bed, and then sort of repeat, as it were. Clearly, this is the accommodation that's provided. I don't know what Lagrange is actually sort of has got. I know the one over in France. There's one in Conflans down in France. Is very much, they offer dormitory style with just sort of curtains between people, which I'm afraid they've gone past that a little bit. I have to say, really, that whilst 2 of us booked into this, that Dave moved out after one night in there on the basis that it's just too small. With astronomers do not travel light, and as you can see, that was my kit on the second bed. There isn't an awful lot to swing a cat. One thing also, if you are going overseas, then you need to be aware of if you do tend to go into night mode, and that's what we tend to do if we're going over there. So you arrive the first day, so if you can get an early morning flight, so you arrive mid-afternoon, you go down to Lidl's to get something to eat for the week, and then so if you get up, and then you stay up all night as well, just to try and get into the way of sleeping. What that does mean that if you are in a hotel, then you have to sort of ask things like, can you be on the top floor, because you don't really want people cleaning and moving to furniture up above you to wake you up. Likewise, in this particular one, that you would see that sort of, if you're trying to sleep, the fact that there's nothing there's no curtains or anything, and I've taken you take an eye mask, and there's no curtains on the door, so it does very much a case of you need to be prepared to be adaptive. So when you're going to be going abroad, even if you're in a purpose-built location. So that's me on the observing pad, just where we're sort of near to our accommodation. On this particular time, whilst the November before, I took all my kit, including the EQ5 mount, which I'd taken a hacksaw to the tripod legs to shorten them so they actually could go in my case. I decided on this one because Kai will hire you equipment. So basically, I had an EQ5 mount. I've got, as well as a telescope at home, I decided if I was going to be going abroad on a more frequent basis, that I needed a telescope to take with me. And whilst it was very tempting to get a 4 or 5 inch refractor to go with me, realistically, when I went to Astrofest and picked one up, then it was quite clear that was going to be a major weight challenge to be taking abroad. So the one in the picture is a Williams Optics 71mm f 5.9. And so I use that. It can be used visually at 5.9, but I use it with a field flattener and reducer, basically to use a camera on the back of there. On this particular occasion, I decided to hire the mount from Kai. So I just took it with a Vixen mount on. I also took my hand controller and power source, because those were an extra sort of like €2 a day, and I thought, well, I've got them anyway. So it's sod's law when you get out there that nothing fits anyway, so I had to hire everything. So it cost, basically for me to be renting the mount, cost me about £60, which overall wasn't too bad, based on the fact that it costs you about £60 to have an extra sort of 30 kilos of luggage. So it's quid pro quo as to which is where you pay some money and takes your choice, I suppose. Go on. I also will rent out to you sort of other telescopes as well. He's got a huge supply of Skywatcher telescopes. He's also got this, I think it's a 22-inch job, it's a 22 or 24. The only thing is that it was about 180 euros for 2 nights, and I have to say that if you were going to be doing that, then David booked that in advance, and if I was to be honest, if you were going to be going there, I would suggest that you don't book it in advance, because you pay for it if you use it or not, and because you're sort of saying to him, yes, I want it, and sort of reserve it for me. If it's cloudy, as it was on the first night we were supposed to be using it, basically that's your problem. So therefore, if you were going there, my recommendation would be that you would actually sort of decide on the day, oh, Kai, can I have that one out this evening? And it's a case of just moving it out from a store cupboard just nearby. So it's something to be borne in mind. He's also got a state-of-the-art observatory as well, which comes in about 300 euros a night. So very, very good if you want that, but somewhat pricey. And you can run it from the comfort of the warm room down below, but yeah, you pay some money, it takes your choice again. Okay, disadvantages. This is something that is quite useful if you are going to the Canaries. This is a dust map, and basically you will see on the bottom that this is the Sahara, but effectively this is the Kalima, which is the dust, which basically will it gets picked up by the winds in North Africa, and basically sort of comes out over to the out into the Atlantic. And if you look down below, these islands down here are Cape Verde, which are the sort of linked to the Portuguese. But if you go to Cape Verde, they have got the most stunning silver golden sandy beaches, and that basically has come all the way from Sahara and basically just been dumped on top of them. That hasn't happened so much on the Canaries, and so therefore the Canaries have still got their black pumice beaches. But what happens on occasions, this does actually come out and completely covers the Tenerife in particular. La Palma not quite so much because it's further west, but it's something to be borne in mind. If you're observing there, what that actually meant as far as the images were concerned is, whilst you could still observe visually with telescopes, as soon as you started to take pictures, as the dust moved across the sky, basically you would have any sort of light pollution or any light that was reflecting onto that dust. Effectively, you got that image, and when you then stacked the images all together, you had an uneven gradient going all the way across your picture, which was basically impossible to remove. And so we've had a couple of times on Tenerife where we had 4 out of the 6 nights were basically, it was totally wasted by virtue of the fact you could not take any images at all, only very short ones. So that's one disadvantage for the Canaries, but it's got the advantages sometimes outweigh that. This particular one, this is a picture. It's not my picture. This was taken by one of the German, because it's German owned, the Athelstar camp. They do have a lot of Germans, and a lot of people go over there. They also use it for cycling because there's a lot of trails in La Palma for cycling. But essentially, you've got various elements here. You can see just here. That's the laser that the Williams Herschel one was showing, sort of, that we picked up when we went up the mountain. But you could still see it sort of down at the top of the mountain is at nearly 2,500 meters. The star camp is down at around 900 meters. And they say they've got a sort of a microclimate which gives it is quite sort of clear for about 300 days or 300 nights a year. whether that's true, I can't vouch for that, but certainly we had good seeing for 5 of the 6 nights we had when we were out there. But what is most notable is basically the light, the red light. Now, we all know that astronomers that we use red light because it's has less effect on sort of the pupils of your eyes. But what they have here, because of health and safety, they had a sort of low-level red lights which were on sensors. So if you were observing, setting up your rig to take a series of pictures and then returning up to the orangery as we did, each time you went back up there, it triggered the lights. Now that wasn't, if you're observing or imaging out away from the camp, that was fine. Unfortunately, the Milky Way this was in May. The Milky Way is coming straight up over the mountain, looking over the top of the site, and so therefore this is basically what of a long-term image that he's got. They went to bed and set the camera, and sort of it's going to be clear anyway, so there's no risk of there's any dual problems that potentially you could get, and even that not so much in May. But what he did get was picked up all the lights coming on, which is obviously he must have been severely sort of upset when he actually opened the images on there. You've also got it depends how messy the other people are who are this is the orangery that Bob and I sort of, to some degree took it over. The others weren't using it, and so we sort of had our kit spread out and we're doing a bit of image processing, and a very sort of very social environment it is. And you've got the water, not the water heater, the fire in the background, which is with wood on there, which is nice to come in when you are observing all night to come home to a real fire, as it were. There are a few distractions, obviously, that the wine is particularly good, and you have to pace yourself. You don't end up sort of drunk in control of a telescope. It's a wonderful setting. Yes, there are restaurants there. Unfortunately, a lot of the restaurants close in May, which is because that's before their main season, and so a lot of them are family owned. So we did find that we had to pop out and get pizzas and so on to then cook. So that's one of those things. But then you can, once you've had your meal, and then you can basically leave your kit to be cooling down for the and watching the glorious sunset. Now I have to apologise here because it's for whatever reason in PowerPoint it jumped forward by about 3 slides, so I have to go forward and then come back again. So one advantage of having a site where basically nobody else can get into is that you can predominantly set your mount up and leave it sort of polar aligned by and large. So this was the night between the 7th and 8th of May in 2019. This was a one-day-old moon that's pictured. So in other words, just prior to, I hadn't realigned for a second time that evening. It had been aligned from the previous night, and so I just thought we would give it a try to, before I aligned properly, was to slew to the go to moon, and that was the picture of just, I think it's just about a one-day moon, sort of zoomed in on the camera screen. Oh, again. Now, obviously, out of the huge number of people on the call, that everybody will know that sort of, yes, you need to polar align. So one of the things that I've found as going sort of with a portable rig is the use of a pole master, and I'm not don't know quite how many people tend to use it in Newbury. It's sort of not taken Basingstoke by storm, but a lot of people use them because it effectively takes a lot of the guesswork and the grovelling on the ground out of the polar alignment. I have to say, in addition, that as I normally wear glasses, that's trying to polar align when you're crouched under on these, trying to look through the poloscope through the sort of line on the floor, and you're looking over the top of your glasses. I can't see blimmin' things, so trying to find the Polaris, and have you got the right Polaris? And so this is a means of aligning in a far better way. But this is how you effectively, yes, you can, Polaris is down here, then effectively the program works. You can adjust the sensitivity of the camera and the gain on there. So in other words, depending on how light it is, and then if you hover over it with your if you hover it over in real time, that's what you get. So it actually shows which star is which. You then double click on it, then you use the cursor to go from here over to left and right, and these basically move round, and therefore you align. You have it in Polaris in the center, and it then aligns with the stars. You then have to slew it by 30 degrees to one side in using the hand controller. You do it by further 30 degrees as well, and then once you've done it a third time, you sort of press says go back to your original starting point, and you slow it back to, and then what it does is it creates a circle around the sort of where your star should follow back. You've then got a point at which in the red point in the middle where the center of the circle is, you've clearly got Polaris over to one side, and then you have to move the Polaris onto the guide in the middle. It does mean that you can actually you move it with using not the hand controller, but using your declination and turning the actual mount itself. So in other words, you loosen it, turn it round, and then tighten it up. There is a very fine-tuning version, which is this getting to the green onto the red. Quite frankly, by the time you move it and then you tighten it back up again, I tend to find that sort of tends to throw the alignment out by more than you gain. And if you're only taking relatively short images, then that's not too bad. And of course you can guide as well. So that's the setup that I had on there. One of the things is that if you're using the Polemaster, it's a good idea to disconnect it afterwards, because it was connected to the laptop and had special sort of those connectors where you screw them into the laptop, and the mount flew to one side and the laptop ended up on the landing on the side. So not a best practice, I want to throw. Okay, so on the marathon side, down at Basingstoke, we were obviously formed in 2004, and we've had various marathons, sort of messier marathons. I personally find, having been on the committee and chairman and there for two separate occasions, and basically we seem to unorganise messier marathons more than we actually organise them, because the times that we've had them, the first one was I think in our first year, and we had a barbecue, but we didn't like the barbecue. It was one of those great big half oil drum times, and the barbecue wasn't lit till about 10 o'clock, and by which time everybody was absolutely starving. So that was a huge success. The next one was probably our most successful, was when the Icelandic volcano went up and and all the planes were grounded, and that was superb because it was overnight. There were no contrails at all, and that was the perfect one. But I've never really done a messier marathon in full. I've set up and done. It's taken me longer to set up than people with dobs and who've been sort of going around the sky and got about sort of 20 things before I'd even started. So this was what do I do on one of the evenings, and then I decided to why not just see how it goes. This was a plug for Sky section, BAA. There are various books. There is an acknowledged time of year to be going for a messier marathon, that that is generally around the end of March, beginning of April, when the nights are longer. So it was always going to be a little bit touch and go to try for one in May. But I thought, okay, let's just see how I go. Now I also feel a little bit about Messier ones. There's a saying that you're only cheating yourself if you cheat at golf or whatever. And sometimes I wonder when we're looking at Messier objects, that everybody's around and say, "Oh, can you see that fuzzy object there?" And then everybody, "Oh yes, it's definitely that one." Yeah, and then, "Oh, we'll tick that one off." And I do. What I wanted to do was to take a picture of each one, so it was a record and a verification process. So now this is the. Because it was made, this is the sequence. It is basically on right ascension, and so therefore they are grouped together. As you can see, I've ringed the M42 and 43. Basically, anything before that, it was basically too light. And you've got the M45, the Pleiades. That I knew where it was, but you couldn't see it at all. But so. That was where I had to, I tried, you slew to, aligned again, slew to the moon, that was fine, slew to M31, and it's pointing down below the sea level, so it clearly wasn't going to work. So the first ones I could get really were going to be M42 and 43. So what I was using, that Owen was talking about, sort of moving over to CMOS cameras, that I've previously used DSLRs that and before had a modded 600D Canon camera, which is why I'm using this backyard EOS. They also do one for Nikon, but this is the Canon version. The advantage of it for me is that you can focus on it. So you've got various aspects of it. You've got a histogram there. You've got an image there. You can create on the in the file header. You've got all the details in there. It can feed in the time, the exposure, and also you can then type in your object as well. So for the Messier objects, basically all I had to do, and some say the purist, Callum possibly amongst them, no doubt, and presumably Owen as well, that this is completely cheating. But you can sort of you can slew to the next one. You can then type it into your the next Messier object, and then go on to your next image. So I found that worked particularly well. And on this one, I was using, I upgraded, so I was going on Safari, so it was a good excuse to buy a new camera. So I got a Canon 6D, which it has a far greater sort of noise sort of ratio and higher sort of ISO. So I was working at 3200 on this because I simply wanted to get as much lighting as possible, and I was using predominantly minute exposures just to prove that I've actually seen it. So this is the type of pictures I would like to be taking. This is obviously the Orion Nebula. And what I've done on this one is that's just done a little bit in my limited expertise in PixInsight. But what I wanted to do on this one was, yes, the same picture, but it's also got, we're using PixInsight to put on the basically to confirm what objects they are and give the right ascension and so on. So this is basically to prove that which particular objects are which within the image. So off we went. So M42 and M43, as I said on the list, this was going to be the first one. So that's clearly, it was not dark at the time. The blue sky, and even then a minute exposure was far too much, so I had to come down to about 15 seconds. But it was just really to show that was the first two ticked off of the 110. That was really that. Just wanted to show that's M78, which was the next one on there. That this M78, it's fairly easy to. So you've got this quite noticeable asterism there, and the M78 is down here. But I think I just really felt it was easier when sort of identify what resolution you can see on the screen when it's obviously on Zoom rather than being on a big screen in front of you. So what I've on all the future ones is to include the details on PixInsight to show which particular was. So this is the next one as M35 and the open cluster. So move forward. We then go so they're not they're in order of acquisition rather than the numerical order. So M37, another open cluster, M36. So it's hard to, bearing in mind that these were objects that Messier, with a 3-inch sort of telescope, which is effectively 71mm Williams optics, is equivalent to what Messier must have been working on. Yes, I've got the advantage of being of taking an exposure for a minute that obviously gets a far larger amount of light, but one does question as to whether these were really comet-like objects, but hey ho. So M38 that we've got there, and basically that takes us on to that was number 20 in the list. So only 90 to go. It would be very tedious, and I remember that Paul Money came down to Basingstoke at one point and did a sort of a Messier marathon challenge, going through all 110 of them. So I won't inflict that on you, but just wanted to pick out a few of them which I thought were quite nice. Obviously, the Beehive cluster at M44 is a lovely group if you can see it through binoculars as well. And it is possible when you are on if you are not so much if you're doing something like the marathon, but if you're just sitting out observing from the Athos Star Camp or on the Palmer, it is superb just to have a pair of binoculars. And friend Dave has got a pair of 4-inch binoculars, which is absolutely superb. And basically looks at various bits and pieces using the recommendations of Owen and others to pick up on things to look at. But so this was not so much to look. This night was just on the marathon itself. Leo triplet. Obviously, you get certain areas of the sky as to which are jam-packed full of different deep sky objects. This one in particular, you've got the Leo triplet, but you've also got there's so many other ones which are sort of suitable to be looked at in detail. It's just a wonderful area of the sky. A bit of a sort of zoom in on M51 pinwheel, actually. So bearing in mind it hasn't got darts taken off it. Didn't feel it was worth it, and hasn't got flats on it. But that was a straight sort of drop it into PixInsight, get the data, the photometry on it, and get the lines on it, and just a quick stretch and to give me that one. So not too bad. And then a lovely globular sort of M3 that sort of is superb from if you're observing from the Palmer. It's really good to see. So when you're observing all night, that's yes, you've had a meal beforehand, but you get to a point about sort of 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning when you do need a sugar boost. So it's a case of leaving the setup, and because there are times when you've taken pictures of the various objects that if you want to, and you've got it in advance of yourself to so that you can sort of look forward to an hour's time, and you pick up sort of three messy objects at once. So you can leave your telescope for sort of half an hour and go and have yourself a warm hot chocolate and hot buttered toast. There's nothing quite like the jam to sort of give you a sugar boost, and that it's very well received. And that's one of the advantages of going to somewhere where you've got accommodation and facilities that you can use, that basically you can go and warm up a bit. We didn't have the fire on, because if you have the fire on, it produces a whole load of smoke coming up the top, which is not particularly good for seeing. But it does mean that you can come up, use the facilities, you can warm up, you can cook yourself something, and that is far better than being at the side of the road, where basically you might have a flask and a peanut butter sandwich, but not an all-for day, so extra. So once you've recovered a little bit, going back to the marathon, we've got Markarian's chain here, wonderful set of galaxies altogether. You know, it's a wonderful part of the Milky Way. And then you've also got the Lagoon and Trifid Nebula. This is absolutely wonderful. If you take it, this is not so good. This is with the Mark 6 II Canon camera with my old adapted optics, the 600D. You've got the filter taken out, and you get the hydrogen alpha, which is suppressed and taken out by the non-filters. So it's a wonderful area of the sky, and it is somewhere that you really want to be taking your pictures if you do go out there. Okay, so basically the final rush that as dawn approaches. So you've got here, so we've gone here from the M42 all the way down. You've got your list, and then when we come up to this is about M8 down here, effectively we go through to the 110th is M30. So at that point, it was getting lighter, and it is light by 7 o'clock. So basically, as we come through, and what I hoped, so at that point I'd started at 12, so 13 at 14, so I'd missed up to 12. I'd also missed M1 was also down in the clouds of the horizon clouds. So I had 13 of them which I would basically not be able to see. So my maximum was 97 that I was going to get to, which was a little bit disappointing. So effectively, what I had was the final push to get to M30 and see what was available. So M2, another nice globular cluster, 6:38 in the morning. It's getting light. The sort of by the bluer background, reduced exposure time, and that was that one. M72 and M73, 6:39. Getting those two. And M30, the final one, at 6:41. So it was really a matter of, so I looked over to the other side of the sky, basically of the evening sky coming up in the morning, and thought, oh, let's just slew to M31. So looking back to there, these are the ones going up to M31. Up on that side. So that was effectively what I had. 6:43, M31 it's nothing to write home about, but yes, seen it. So M32 and also M110 as well. So that effectively caught up 3 of the ones that I'd lost from the evening before because they were in the murk, and basically, that gave me 100 Messier objects imaged and verified out of the 110 total. So yeah, a pleasing result. It's the first time I've done it and verified it myself and got images of each particular one. So I was quite pleased that what I'd done, and it was just a fun something to do on an evening that. And I just wanted to share with you the final one. That was, we were flying back on I think it's a Thursday morning, and I woke up because we weren't used to be sleeping we hadn't observed that night we'd gone to bed at normal time, but you're a little bit disorientated as far as times are concerned. So I woke up at around 3:30 in the morning and thought okay, well, I'm not going to go back to sleep. So I went out with a pair of binoculars, and this was a 10-second exposure with the just from the site. Obviously, nobody else was up and about, so I didn't get any red lights on from the walkways. And this was just looking at the Milky Way, and it's just something to behold, and so wonderful. And the trouble is, you are spoiled. You come back home again and you look up at the sky, and it's something you think, really, is it worthwhile going out? There's a little bit of wispy cloud there, and you're so spoiled for choice. But alack that we can't go out there at the moment, but hopefully perhaps next year we may be able to travel again. So you for listening, and clear skies, and I hope that a little bit of a holiday snaps, not too much of, but it was just a little bit of it might help people an idea to take the telescope abroad, because I would thoroughly recommend it to everybody. Thank you. Over to you, George.
Okay. If we can unshare the screen, and then we can get.
Yes, of course. Sorry. Yes.
And then if people have got any questions, then fire away. I mean, while people are thinking, you mentioned the Ollie Penrice thing, and he has a lodge in the south of France.
Yes.
And it can accommodate 6 or maybe 8 people to go up there. And it's got some observatories there as well. And they've got various telescopes that you can hire. When we went there, nobody was staying that week. So the 2 of us had accommodation for 8 people. And Ollie said, well, you might as well use every telescope. So we did. And there's about 6 of them there. So, and the conditions were pretty good, but the seeing wasn't brilliant. There was a bit of atmospherics. And really the first question, which is, did you get a chance to measure what the seeing was in La Palma?
Yes. Is it 21 point something or other?
Oh, that's the transparency. I was thinking, because at the top it's sub-arc second seeing, obviously on the professionals.
Yes, on the. I mean, you can get the data, because the each night and during the night the observatories, both at the top of Tenerife and also at La Palma, give all the details as to what the seeing actually is. So you've got the humidity on there, you've got all sorts of things, and indeed they've also got webcams at the top. It's both run by the IAC for the Canaries, the Astrophysical Institute of the Canaries. And basically, Tenerife is far more accommodating as far as amateurs are concerned than the Palma is not. It's very much a professional sort of outfit up there. If you're not a professional, then you're not wanted on the site at all. And whilst you can observe from the national park, which is the very top of the rock, it is not particularly good to observe from there. You're stuck up there because they lock you in and you can't come through the observatory. But also it gets very cold. It's right at the top of the wind, and whilst you gain a bit of height, you lose that in the wind buffeting your scope for most of the time. So when we've observed without accommodation up near the top, we've tended to go a bit further down. The new residential centre may be somewhere in the future that you can use, but there are what they call miradors, which are basically lay-bys by the side of the road where you can set up, and there's very little traffic coming over, so you don't normally. But the seeing is, yes, it's sub-arc in the majority of cases. It depends when you go. In the winter, it's less good, but in the summer, it tends to be very still.
Alan.
Yes.
Yeah, great talk. I mean, I'm feeling very nostalgic because I've been to La Palma a couple of times, but I took this picture. I don't know if you can see. That's actually Tenerife from La Palma.
Yes.
That's the light pollution from Tenerife. So that's Tady in the middle of it. So that light pollution goes a long way. It
does, and even there was on one of the ones, I think we were on Tenerife, but there were fires over in Gran Canaria, and you could see those fires all the way over in Tenerife as well. So the Palma is the light laws are, I think they were introduced in 1988, and they've worked very well. I think the agreement is coming to an end, so I'm not quite sure what is going to happen. Obviously, there was a lot of pressure on the government over there to keep the lights down, but the cloud does form, paradoxically, a degree of screening on there.
Yeah, I mean, when I've been there, I've stayed at the coast, and it always seems to be cloudy on the coast. Cloud is conserved, you know. It's cloudy on the coast, and you have to go inland and get above it.
I mean, it is that we've got a video which has been shortened. It's an hour journey going up up the mountain in the car, and then
Yeah.
it is being built. It was built when the telescopes weren't, so the road was built, and they have to clear it for rock falls and so on most days. But we've got a video reduced down to about 5 minutes, and it makes you sick when you watch it. It's set to music, but I didn't think I would inflict that on you. But we stayed on the coast, but it really does take it out. If you drive up, it is well. One person is sort of sick nearly all the time, and so you have to have. If nobody wants to go with Ian, unfortunately, because he has a car on his own in the end, because he just has to stop so many times to throw up and then go on again. But it does mean that if you stay down the bottom, driving down at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7, if it's light when it's 7 o'clock when you stayed up all night, we tend to have 2 people in the car so you can share it halfway. Because driving down when it's sort of 200-meter drops just the other side of a small little sort of crash barrier is not the best thing to do.
Yeah, when I went there, well, both times I was doing things during the day as well, so it basically killed me. It wasn't much of a holiday.
Yeah, I must admit, we have found some accommodation up near the top, because the top, I think possibly I said the observatory is up around 2,500 meters. The star camp, I'd say, is at about 900 meters, and it's on a fairly steep slope, so the clouds tend to go past it and down if they're falling. We have found some villas up at around 1,800 meters, which did tend to be cloudy during the day, but tended to clear through the night. So, and it's also, if it is cloudy, then it's only sort of quarter of an hour to get right up to the top of the mountain. But what we tended to do was to go out. You can start observing for about 7 o'clock in the evening, have a meal, pop out, set up. You can observe for say 5 hours to sort of up until sort of 11, 12 o'clock. Then you can get into bed, sleep till 10 o'clock. Then you can actually be up. Excuse me. Then you can be up and going walking, which it does. It is such wonderful walking things, and the sort of images that sort of the picture with Dave and I up at the top. You can actually walk down into the caldera if you want to, but remembering that it's at 2,500 meters, it does. If you're not fit, then it can. So it's not as high as Kilimanjaro, but it can sort of, for people who get short of breath, and it's not particularly wonderful. You don't go running around.
Well, in Tenerife, there's a hotel right up next to Teide. I've stayed there once.
Yeah.
And that was good, except they locked me out of, I ended up getting locked out and having to wake up the guy that let me in.
I can't
remember.
You have to wake up. The Parador.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Parador is interesting because I don't know if it's still there, but Rod Greening had a 24-inch telescope that you could rent. But my experience is that Largal Outland on the south of the island has pretty much destroyed the darkness there. The light pollution actually on it is gone. But La Palma has been badly impacted by the fires last year, so I don't know how many of the places that I've stayed there once at about 1,200 meters up in the north part of the island.
Yeah.
It's not clear to me that place is still there.
I mean, it's very much a case that of the places to go as to which one you choose, as to whether you want to observe from the site or whether you want to go up the mountain. So it's really a question of which you want to do. The one on the Parador, Owen mentions that telescope. That telescope was offered to us, and we were thinking about buying it because it's by the swimming pool in there, and is it 24-inch, Owen?
It is a 24-inch, yeah.
And we were very glad we didn't sort of get sucked into it, because the people, the owners of the Parador, I think are sort of getting on in years, and whilst they have been quite happy to leave that, let them leave that scope in the shed for many years. That we weren't sure as to how long that was going to last. And as Owen said, that whilst the Parador is set down, it's set down in the caldera quite, so therefore it is shielded a bit from. It's got the raised sort of rim of the caldera going round. We tend to sort of go, if we're going, when we tend to go up by the observatory itself, which is less sort of, affected by the light pollution down the was it Los Cristianos and that bit, the southwest.
It was where the Milky Way was when I was there. That's where the light pollution was.
Yeah.
Also, the seeing is terrible there because of the lava.
Okay.
So it absorbs the heat during the day and then re-radiates it at night.
Mm.
So if you're trying to do high res stuff, it's not going to work terribly well there.
Okay, anyone? I'm flicking through the screens to see if there are any hands. Oh, John. John,
yes, a comment really. Wife and I were lucky to be on the island almost a year ago today. We were lucky to get back, actually. We did wonder because, of course, the virus was kicking in. It was on a holiday. It wasn't so much astronomy, but obviously I did as much as I could. I took my binoculars. But shortly after, if you remember, they had this mega sandstorm and everywhere was covered in sand. And when you looked up at the sky, although it was far better than you get in the UK, you could tell it was just not quite as it should be because there's a load of sand in the sky. But as for going up the mountain, yes, I can vouch for that. All those hairpin bends seem to go on for ever and ever. And we were actually on a coach, and I really take my hat off to those drivers. I swear sometimes the front of that coach was going over the edge. It really was horrendous. But when you get there, obviously the observatories are spectacular, beautiful. But what tends to get overlooked is the amazing geology on top of that volcano. It is absolutely epic. If you ever get a chance to go up there, and those that have been up there, I'm sure you've seen it, the geology is absolutely stupendous. It's well worth going up just to see that, to be honest.
Totally agree with you there, John. Yeah, we were there at the same time as you, weren't we?
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. When we were there, obviously because of the sand, it was still in the air a bit and all the observatories were all shut up, obviously. And you could see this haze, even at that height, it was still hazy where we were. But truly spectacular.
John, that's the Kalima. That's the sand basically coming over from the.
They have it regular, but this year it was absolutely a mega one. It absolutely went everywhere. Yeah, but lovely place to go.
When I went there, and we've been there about 3 times now, I left everybody behind, got in the car, and thought I'll just have a quick dash up the mountain. And Nick Shimonik and Ian King were up there in the Copenhagen telescope. And the quick dash up the mountain took a bit longer than I thought, like an extra hour. And of course, as you say, the hairpin roads. And I had this beaten up old hire car as well. And then during that night, we just got fog and ice. I stayed overnight, and when I got up in the morning, I noticed the icicles were horizontal on the fence. And I thought, I'm not sure I wanted to have come out on that night. But we did get one clear night, and it was a bit like you couldn't recognize constellations easily because there were just too many stars that you don't normally see. Just spectacular. Oh, and I think that was probably the second time that I've seen Venus cast a shadow. I just moved my hand in front of our white car and I could see a shadow move across.
Wow.
Never seen that anywhere else.
Light pollution, George.
Yeah. When we were in Tenerife, I went up to the solar observatories there. They had a lot of pads out, which they were letting amateurs use. when I was at La Palma, and it was many years ago, they were very, very precious about guarding what they had and wouldn't let anyone, certainly amateurs, go onto the site at night. Now, Nick Shamonic and Ian King knew the people who were involved with the Copenhagen scope. But it was a bit like going into a prison when I said, I want to come up. And, you know, these arrangements were made. When we were up there, Nick and Ian were hoping to get some pads made there. And they were in deep discussions, but the Spanish wouldn't budge. Is that now still the case?
Well, it is. What they've actually done is they've started building this visitor centre, which is off the, it's where I took that picture from of the William Herschel looking on the glass. So they've built that, and they've actually put in about 5 pads, which had electricity. Now when we went back, so we went to November 2018 when it was almost completed. We went back again in May 2019, and it was no further forward whatsoever. And
Spanish building, Alan. What do you expect?
Well, no, but we weren't quite. We didn't have a sort of a UK sort of an EU adapter or a Spanish adapter with us to check whether there was any electricity on the pads. But we went up at night, and the first night we were able to get in there. We went up about 2 nights later on, and there was padlocks, and it was all signs saying no entry after 6 o'clock and so on. So clearly, whether they're going to allow people to use, I don't see the point in actually building the pads and putting electricity in if they're not going to let people use them, but who knows?
I suspect it'll be outreach, or it'll be run by a company.
Mm. Okay, sorry, I was getting so trapped in that. Anyone, any questions? If you can either raise your hand or just flash a message across, or just chip in.
I think we're all just depressed that we can't travel anywhere at the moment.
Here.
I certainly am.
Come later this year or early next year, whenever it is, because of course it has to be free and easy not only in the UK but in the destination as well. I don't think anyone wants to go to La Palma, spend 10 days in quarantine and then come back and have another 10 days.
No.
I thought it was Britain. Everyone ignored the quarantine, George.
Alan, are you planning to go back there again?
Well, as I said, I was supposed to be going on next Thursday, the 11th, because it's new moon, and we had a week booked out there, and TUI have cancelled the flights, so nobody, the chap whose property is out there said, oh, you can get flights, but it was flying with British Airways, and you can get flights relatively easy to, or you could up until the last lockdown, to Tenerife, but then to try and get from Tenerife, it's like £130 to fly to Tenerife, and it was then like another £300 to fly over from Tenerife over to La Palma. And if you've got 40 kilos of luggage, then and two connecting flights from different companies, we just thought it's just going to be a logistical nightmare to do it. So yeah, hopefully once TUI are sort of flying back there, unfortunately it's not on the main tourist trail really as much, certainly not as much as Tenerife, and so therefore it may well be a little bit longer that La Palma takes to come back again. They've done their best though. That there is an insurance policy that they sort of touting that sort of people with COVID that sort of, so that if you do fall ill over there, and sort of they wanted to get people back, and whilst it's going to possibly be like a yellow fever sort of jab, that you'll have an inoculation certificate, you'll still have to have your tests and so on, but hopefully that will enable us to move again. I don't know.
Have you ever had anything damaged, Alan? checking telescopes in?
Well, I must admit, because I went for the only the 3-inch telescope, the Williams Optics goes very nicely into a hand luggage. So I do have that in. I carry that on board. Particularly with EasyJet, if you pay the premium one up, you get a reserve seat and you get somewhere. So you've got a bag with you, so you can keep your telescope in there, the camera's in there, and whilst they will quite often, you pack everything nicely in there, and you get to customs and they say, take all that out. That's all got to come out. So you have to empty everything out to put it all separately through the X-ray thing, and then you sort of spend another 10 minutes putting it back together. But in answer to your question, Steve, no, touch wood, we haven't at the moment. That we tend to put the things which the mount and by the time you put the wedge and the tripod in there, and that tends to take up sort of the main allowance.
I flew to Tenerife with a Maksutov once, and they insisted that I put it in the overhead compartment, the overhead, and I was struggling to get it in there, and I managed it in the end.
Okay, well, once again, can we thank you, Alan, for a great talk. And it was great also seeing some really good clear skies as well. I've forgotten what they look like.
Thanks, George.
Thanks a lot. I think it's 10 to 9. If we could have about 10 to 9. If we can have a 10-minute break and then come back together at 9 o'clock. And of course, as Messier is a theme from tonight, hopefully there are a few people who've got their images of some Messier objects taken, and we can just have a look at those and see what you can do from the United Kingdom. So if people could let me, yes, John, I can see it behind you. If they can let me know who would like to have a few minutes to talk about their objects, then more than happy, we can set things up. So we can get back together at 10 to 9. I'm going to stop the recording and then I'll put it back on afterwards. And I'll obviously leave it running. So, you're more than welcome to recording again. If you're off, we can share.
No pressure there.
Yeah, I'm not very good at sharing. Let's see if I can share from the...
Sounds like the EU.
iPad. I have a lot of folders on it. Okay, here we go. There's only 7 images. Don't worry. And none of them are very good. Oh, hang on.
Jeff's cat waiting for you.
What? Yeah, she's waiting for her supper, I think.
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
42.
Yeah. M42, yes. You tend to see a lot of images of this. This was actually a bit of an experiment because I have
everybody.
Hello. Right. This was a bit of an experiment. I mean, you see a lot of these images and they're all done with, well, most of them with German equatorial mounts or star trackers. I've got some DOBs and I also have a couple of tracking platforms, and I use those a lot for planetary and lunar, but I thought I'd have a go with deep sky. So that's actually 4-second exposures. The tracking wasn't very good, but I stacked them and that's what I got. So that's an 8-inch DOB with a Canon 550D DSLR. I thought I'd have a go sort of trying to optimize. Now this is hideously over processed, but I'll show it to you. That's the same setup, 8-inch DOB, this time with 20-second exposures, and it's not great. And what I'll probably do next is I'll reduce the exposures and take more of them, and I might try using the A7S, which can go to much higher ISO, but it's quite colourful. These aren't all messier objects, I'm afraid. The next one you'll recognise. Same setup with the 8-inch Dob, the Pleiades, obviously, some very, very nice diffraction spikes there, and just a hint of nebulosity there. And that's, again, 20-second exposures, just to show you what the setup looks like. Please don't laugh at how untidy my garden is. There it is. That was my back garden the other night. Obviously, traveling is restricted a bit at the moment. So that's the other thing I want to do, is to try to do some of these out in the country away from light pollution. Now, I'll show you some other images as well. One is the good old moon, again with the 8-inch Dob, and that's just the moon as you see it. And then with the colours boosted. You know, that represents the lunar geology. Blue is titanium rich and brown is iron rich. I'm not sure if Chris Hooker's on the meeting tonight, but I've also played around a bit with the ISS. So there's a close-up of the International Space Station, these are always a challenge. What I've been trying to do, I didn't on this one, is to reduce the field of view to increase the frame rate. I've tried that a couple of times sort of unsuccessfully. So that is just a full frame cropped with a 12-inch Dob with a ASI 174mm camera, with a 2.5 times power mate, just hand tracked with a Telrad and just a standard finder. Not sure if you can see, but there's a blob down at the bottom left-hand end of the ISS between the solar panels. That's Crew Dragon. And at the other end, there's a little blob, which is Progress 75, the delivery vehicle, which were docked when I took that picture. And one final one of the ISS, and please don't tell the authorities, but a couple of weeks ago, I travelled about 10 miles with a telescope to get some exercise just north of Banbury. And the reason I did that was this, the International Space Station passing in front of the moon. Now, that wasn't done with a Dob, that was done with a little 127mm Maksutov Cassegrain. Just recording video and then stacked the images and did a bit of processing. But yeah, you can see, you can just about see the shape of the ISS as it moved across. I was looking at the screen when it happened. I didn't see it. That transit lasted 0.6 of a second. I think I probably blinked at the wrong moment. So when I got home and had a look at the video on the laptop, I was very pleased I recorded it. And that is it.
Very nice, Steve. Very nice.
Thank you, Pauline.
Steve, well,
Alan.
I've been doing the same thing with the famous Pontiac mounting.
Yes. It's very sensitive. You've got to twiddle a little
Oh,
pop.
yeah. And it doesn't help when the battery dies in the middle of it and you wonder why you can't track. But the thing I find is, of course, you don't get any backlash, do you? When you move your camera or a telescope to a different place, it carries on driving and there's no sort of need to take it up. But I've been putting a tripod on with a 66mm lens on it, and it works brilliantly. It really does.
Good. Now, the one thing I keep on doing is because you have to bend down to operate the switches, and I keep on accidentally flicking it to tracking in the southern hemisphere rather than switching it off.
Yeah.
So I go to it and it's tracking the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Or trying to, anyway.
I think once we get past lockdown, I'll be speaking to the other Mark about seeing if we could do a bit of electronics of bringing those controls into a hand control at the so you can do it at the eyepiece. So Mark Burns will be.
Are you listening, Mark?
He'll be investigating that in due course, I'm sure.
Mark's our
Yes,
development team.
Yeah, very reasonable rates.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm saving up for that rate. Yeah, anyway. No, it works very well. I'm currently writing for, is Owen still with us? No.
I drove him away.
Oh, yeah. I'm writing an article for I'm going to put it in the Web Society magazine about you move on from the Dobsonian and putting it on the Poinsett mount is the next step. And why people don't have them, I don't know. I even tracked down the original. I've got a copy, Sky and Telescope, of the original article by Poinsett on the original mount in 19 January 77 was when it was first invented. So very crude.
It was funny because I put on Facebook pictures of various setups, and somebody said, well, there's only one equatorial mount there. And I said, well, actually, there's three, you know, because the tracking platform is a equatorial mount, and people just don't think of it. And they lots of people just assume you get field rotation. And I said, no, you don't. No, there's no field rotation. It is an equatorial mount, just a different one.
It works superbly, and you can, I mean, you're putting quite a large, heavy mass of a telescope on a very simple mount.
They're so simple.
Yeah. Anyway, I've done. I mean, last week the last time it was clear, I did exactly the same photograph as you did, but with a big telephoto lens. I can't take prime focus on my telescope. I'm going to have to buy a low profile focuser. I'm about 2 millimeters short to get onto prime focus. So pain in the neck.
Frustrating. Yeah. Anyway. With the Skywatcher, you can take the like an eyepiece holder, and you can take it out and get the DSLR closer to the mirror, so you can hit focus. You can only do that with the 8-inch, though. It doesn't work with the 12-inch. 12-inch, I can't use a DSLR.
No. Well,
Alan, can't you take the lens out of the Barlow and then put that in and put your camera into the Barlow without the lens to give you a bit more movement? I've done it on my DSLR.
I need to get closer. But by the time you put the camera adapter onto something, you keep on pushing out away from the prime focus. And I don't want to move the mirrors up, which is the traditional way of doing it, because if you push the mirrors up, I'm going to start vignetting on the secondary. So I need to change the focusing mount.
Yeah.
You can do you get low profile focusing mounts. I only need about 2 or 3 millimeters. Otherwise, it's just frustrating. It's just out of focus. So, but I shall experiment. Maybe next month I shall find out how to do it. And while I'm on, about a month ago, I showed some pictures of the moon taken with the mobile phone. I then found you could buy a remote control for your mobile phone.
Oh yeah.
All of £2.99.
Oh, I say. It's such an expensive hobby, astronomy, isn't it?
Yeah, it works to be. It works brilliantly. You can fire the camera, the mobile phone from several meters away. It works very well. So you don't get any vibrations when you take photographs with the mobile phone. Great stuff.
We'll expect some images to show us how wonderful it is next month.
Yeah, do some more.
Okay. Right, okay. If I could ask John.
Yeah.
If you're ready to go, John, well, let's go.
Okay, let me see if I can get this to work. Yeah, got that?
Yeah, wow.
Now, sure, I don't need to tell you which M number this is. It's such an iconic object, and most images have had to go imaging this sometime or other. This was back on the 22nd of January. First clear night we've had this year, well, clearish. The moon was about. I'd been out all evening finishing off another project, and it was still clear, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste all this clear sky. So I thought, what can I do? And I wanted an object that was not too near the moon, so I chose M51. Now this is with the C14. I've taken images of this before with the C11, and I always wanted to go back and revisit this one with the C14. So I thought, ideal opportunity. And on the telescope, I had the color camera. This is the Attic 414 CCD, not CMOS, color camera. And on the camera, I had the Zoe, the ASI dual filter. Now, don't ask me how these filters work. They're amazing. I don't understand it, but it does hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3 while doing the luminance all in one go. Now, I managed to get 74 frames at 2 minutes. Got to bed at 6:30 in the morning. It was a bit cold. So I thought, well, the next morning, I'll see what I've got. And I put it through a bit of software that I've not used much yet, called APP, Astro Pixel Processor. Now this software, you just chuck all the data in, all your frames, all your dark frames, all your flats, all your bias frames, click a few buttons and off it goes, chugs away for a few minutes and spits the picture out at the end. And that's great. I've never been a great fan of that way of doing it. I'm much more of a hands-on person, and I'd rather have more control of what's going on. But I'm beginning to come round because it did such a good picture of this. Now, this is not the image that came out of APP, because I took it and put it into another bit of software from Topaz Labs called Gigapixel. Now, Topaz Labs are coming out with all this software. You get one for sharpening called Sharpening AI, one called Gigapixel for enlarging. They do one for reducing noise. And I believe they do one now for converting JPEGs to RAW, for instance. They're very much the new kids on the block at the moment. Now, Gigapixel is actually designed for normal photography. There's no way you can say we do normal photography. But the idea is to take a picture and you can enlarge it 2 times, 4 times, even more, so that you can get a really good large print. Now, it's turning out that if you tweak it right and you can play around with it, it's turning out to be really, really good for astrophotography. Now, I use it because when I'm using the C14 with the camera, because of the sampling rate, I have to bin the image. In other words, instead of using it 1-to-1 on the camera, I have to bin it. I'm using, instead of 1 pixel, I'm using blocks of 4 pixels to increase the sensitivity, because it gives me a better sampling rate. But doing that, of course, it produces a smaller picture, lower resolution. And when you enlarge it, you start getting the pixelation. So Gigapixel is ideal for me because you can put it in and say, I want it 2 times enlarged, and you can tweak it for sharpening, different ways of doing it, sharpening, reduce noise. And it came out with this, and I was gobsmacked because I cannot believe what it did, to be honest. When you look in the middle there, there's so much detail going on. And I keep thinking there must be artifacts in there somewhere. There must be something going on. But when you compare it to lots of images you see on the internet, the detail is there. It's just brought it out. And I'm really, really impressed with the software. It's called Gigapixel, and I can highly recommend it. I think it costs about 50 or 60 quid. Heck of a lot cheaper than Photoshop, I can tell you. So I'm really, really pleased with what it did there. Yeah, I'm going to be using that again. And bear in mind, this was with the moon around as well. So it wasn't the best of nights. So really pleased. M51. I've got one more image to show because 2 nights back, I was out there again and I started another project. And I'm sure you can tell me, well, I wonder, can you tell me if I can move it? Wait a minute. How do I change the picture? Bear with me. I'll have to come out and come back in. it's not letting me show another picture. No, there. Can you tell me what this is? An M number? Oh, I'll get this right in a minute. It's an M number. Almost unrecognizable. Any ideas? Oh, am I muted?
No, you're still okay.
It's M66 in the triplet. Now, I did the same thing. I put it through APP and then through Google Pixel, and it came up with this. Now, arguably, that is quite a weird picture, and it's almost three-dimensional. And I'm still playing with this. I've got lots more to do, and this is one of the first ones that came out. And as I say, the bit of software, there's all different ways of tweaking it, and we're getting used to how to do this. Now, this is luminance, just black and white, mono. Hopefully next clear night I'll be able to get some color to add to it, but it looks very promising. I just like the effect it's giving. Call it artistic license if you like, but actually the details are all there if you compare it with other images. It's just a different sort of view. So I'll keep you posted on what happens with this. Hopefully I'll have a color version soon. So yeah, that's it. That's my two images I was going to show. Hope that was okay.
John, I can't get over how much nebulosity you've actually brought out in those pictures. You know, right around the edges of the galaxies. You never ever see that much. It's just amazing.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
And I think Topaz will also let you use the program for a month or two, so you can try it out first.
Oh yes, you can get a demo version. Yeah.
So I think I'll give that a go. I use their denoise, and if you get the settings right, it's excellent.
Yeah. Also, the sharpening one's okay, but funny enough, some objects it works, and sometimes some objects it doesn't. I get the feeling it likes colour better than black and white. But anyway, I'm still playing with that. But yeah, it's lots of potential.
John, that M66, was that taken with that dual filter as well?
No, that was just straight through the camera, through light pollution filter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why didn't you use the dual filter for that?
Because the filter is designed for colour camera.
Oh, that's a mono image.
This is a mono camera.
Oh, that's great. Gotcha. Great.
Yeah. I did wonder what it would do if I did put the dual filter on there. I've not done that yet.
Probably just dim it down a bit.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, the dual filters.
But to be honest, a galaxy, you're not going to gain much with hydrogen alpha or oxygen. So I'm going to do straight RGB on this one. If we get a clear night without the moon.
Okay, well, thanks very much, John. Right, if I can share my screen. Oh, it's interesting. Is anyone seeing anything? Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, got it now.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, okay, let's just quickly. Right, that's my dome I've shown before. That's the Takahashi, which I was using on the 10 micron mount. And that's my new camera, which is the ASI ZWO C2600 with an APS size chip, and it's back illuminated, so it's about 80-something% quantum efficiency. On the front, it's got this very clever thing that allows you to change the tilt of the camera, and you adjust these, which when you screw it onto your telescope, they stick out. And you change the tilt of the camera in case it's slightly tilted. And I found that the camera was absolutely flat on. So very clever device, but I don't need it, or didn't need it. So this is M31, which I think I've shown before. And the camera produces something like 6,500 pixels by 4,000. And each of the images you produce are 52 megapixels big. So when you get, and in this case, there's 20 images of 3 minutes each, plus the dark frames and flat field, I put it into APP, and then I have to leave it for something like 2 hours while it processes it. So clearly I need to get a bigger and more powerful computer. But that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. And these little blobs here are globular clusters in M31. And this is a large blue star association, OB association, NGC 206, I think. Can't exactly remember. So you can see star clusters and globular clusters in a nearby galaxy. So I managed to get a bit of imaging done on a couple of nights. This is M42, obviously, and M43, and also the Running Man next to it. And again, because the chip's so big, there's a lot more detail in there, and it's possible to zoom in a little bit. So I'll just look at the main nebula there. And that's the main nebula. And I quite like all this dark and what I'm going to call slightly smoky detail there, and what's going on up there. I'm hoping to return to it because there's a lot of very faint nebula also around the edges. But of course, if you go for that, you burn this out even more than it is there. Okay, my next image. This is the Iris nebula, NGC 7023. And this was 40 3-minute images. It's quite faint. And this was again taken with the color camera. One thing I noticed, and I've just finished processing this today, was a lot of people show all of this being very blue. But I noticed this part here is pinkish red, and there's bits in here that are pinkish. And I need to go exploring other images just to make sure whether it is all fluorescent blue, or whether actually the colors are more subtle that are in there. And certainly I'd welcome anyone's views or who knows about this particular object. And I want to revisit it with one of those dual band filters. But as you may have noticed, John, you can't buy them at the moment for love nor money because there's a shortage. And I was hoping to get the L Extreme filter or the L Enhance. I need a 2-inch filter, and I just can't get them. And what they do, which is quite clever, is the H alpha, the filter cuts everything out bar the H alpha, which will appear in the red part, the Bayer matrix on the color camera, and the O3 that will appear in the green part of it. And that allows you to enhance views of nebula. Anyway, they're my images, and only 2 new ones because of the less than brilliant conditions we've had here.
George?
Yeah.
Oh, too late, you've gone. No, just looking at that Iris Nebula, I can see a face in that.
Oh, okay, let me.
I think I can see 2 eyes. It's like a skeletal face. Oh, it's gone.
Come on, machine, go.
You need to go back one, George.
True. You mean?
Yeah, 2 eyes. Can you see the 2 eyes?
Oh yeah, I've got it.
And a
And
mouth.
a nose.
Yeah.
And a mouth. Yeah.
Beard.
Yeah.
It's
I can
Jesus.
see a gorilla.
It's Jesus.
It's like a skeletal face.
Yeah.
You can also see an alien grey there. The eyes are
Yeah.
big, just mean that the white is the white face of a grey.
Just standard ET, isn't it?
Looks like a monkey to me.
Before, really, they always turn it up in science.
I think it's a gorilla, not a monkey.
Yeah, it could be monkey. Yeah.
I'm only drinking lemonade here. I think I need to join in with the others.
I think it's God.
Yeah.
That caused silence.
Yeah.
I'll have another drink and see what I can see.
Don't.
Okay.
You've noticed he's saluting as well. It's a very thick hand, but he's very, yeah, he's doing
Oh, I
something.
know. It looks like the head on Easter Island.
And who said astronomers don't have imagination?
Exactly.
It's just with naming things that we don't have we've got no idea how to name things, have we?
No, we just give their RA and deck, or say, well, you know, this is M42, and everyone goes, that's a motorway in Birmingham.
I'm waiting for one of the American ones, like the Hershey Bar Nebula.
Well, some of them are very descriptive, like the Running Man Nebula, which I tried to look up its proper number, and I think it's something like SH2-279. So I prefer the Running Man. But if we can get some more clear nights, I have to admit I'm quite pleased actually with the colour cameras, because I thought in the past when I've used one, you end up with a very soft looking colour, and it's just a sort of glorified black and white. You think, no, that doesn't work, but they do work, and they work really well.
Well, I think you really need one in this country, because you've got to take advantage of the short, clear skies.
Yeah, Owen's gone now. I'm reviewing some software for the Web Society, and one of the great selling points of it is it keeps a running track of all the images you've taken, so that you know a year ago, you know, you did the reds of the M42, and last year you did the greens, but you haven't done the blues yet.
That's it, yeah.
And I've got, and it's found all these things for me, and now I'm thinking, well, I needn't bother, just do 20 colour images, and you get an image.
Yeah. Oh, it can easily take 2 or 3 years to get a complete image.
We've got beautifully clear nights next week, presumably, because it's going to go freezing. It's either going to go freezing cold and beautiful clear nights, or freezing cold and it's going to dump a load of snow on us. Come on, astronomers, get out there and get going. I enjoy the product, the fruits of your labours. I'm not going to go in for the labour bit. That's all.
Well, as you all know, as you saw from the first picture, I'm normally indoors when it's imaging.
Wise astronomer.
I'm very much involved. I'm on my hands and knees tweaking a little pot, trying to balance the tracking. I think it makes me a better person, personally, rather than being sat inside watching Netflix, missing a dark sky.
Okay, when the temperature's -10, yeah, we'll talk about it again.
Yeah, I won't be out in my garden. I'll be in a field. I can't even nip in for a cup of tea.
While you astro imagers are there, would you mind if I use your pictures in this month's Beginners magazine?
I'll be delighted.
No, no problem.
Yeah.
You okay, John?
Yeah, sure.
Because the subsidiary thing on there rather than the main item was a quick look at the messier objects for beginners. So you've given good pictures there. And I'll use your one as well, Steve Knight.
Okay. Mine isn't very good.
Pardon?
Mine are not in the same league as George's and John's.
Well, just looking at it, it's not going to look like that.
No, but
I don't think I'd ever get any of this space station.
Yeah.
Those pictures that John and George have done do show people what they're actually looking at. But for us, for beginners, it's to see it with your own eye, through your own telescope or binoculars, isn't it? But it's also nice to know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I've commented before, there have been times when I've set the dome up imaging and it's ticking away and doing the right thing, and I get a telescope out and I just go look at star clusters.
Yeah.
And when you see, you know, diamonds on black velvet, you know, just takes your breath away.
Mm.
So anything that encourages people to have a go, and if people can see, you know, the sort of images that Steve's taken with the Dobsonian, you know, and a lot of people say, well, you can't take proper images unless you've got one of them big fancy mounts with computers hanging off the back. And you've just shown that's not true, Steve. So great, let's encourage people.
The world's full of non-Dob owners saying you can't take pictures with a Dob, you know, so.
Well, we've seen it tonight and we can prove they're wrong.
Mm-hmm. And with a DSLR.
Exactly. So yeah, no, that's good. Anyway, guys, and gals, sorry, we're at 9:30.
Yeah.
25 to 10. So I think it would be a good point. Let me just turn that off.